Hello and welcome back to Continental Club, the first episode of 2023. We hope you had a good New Year's. A bit of a new look for us today. No Doogie, he's off on a scouting mission in Kenya, I believe. And we were going to have Zach, but he dropped out due to bigger things, apparently. Can you believe? Give him some hate in the comments, please. Actually, don't do that. But yes, anyway, joining me today, as always, is my good friend, Marcus McCubbin, back on Continental Club. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Henry. I'm good, thanks. How about yourself?
Yeah, really well. We've got a new set in the East Dulwich Tavern. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
I think our fourth separate set here. So do come down if you're in the area because it is a great pub. I believe Dulwich Hamlet Women's are upstairs doing a shoot. So yeah, they provide for the football community at this pub.
No, absolutely, brilliant pub. But yes, today we are looking at some bargain transfers because there's been a lot of chat on Football Daily and Euro Football Daily recently about the big ticket items potentially. Enzo Fernandez, won't he move? Mikhailo Mudryk, is he going to go for £18 million? João Felix, is it worth paying £21 million for a 6 months loan? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So we thought we'd look at the lower end of the spectrum, some of the bargain transfers. We put this out to you guys on Twitter and you came back with some great responses. So thank you so much once again. We're going to kick off, McCubbin, with probably the most liked answer to my tweet. Marcus Thuram looks like he could be available from Borussia Mönchengladbach. Could be potentially interesting to a Manchester United fan. What do you think?
Yes, I think so. This comes over from @Capslock, and I must admit, Henry, I don't think I've ever been as bored of a January transfer window. Only 4 or 5 days into it, as I am at the moment, just because the talk around Mudryk, Enzo, and João Felix has just been incessant. It's just been too much. And I actually think what's a shame is that like a lot of these other players who are available for much less money have actually gone under the radar a little bit, which is weird for a January window when clubs are usually looking to not spend that much. Marcus Thuram is, I think, the perfect example of that. I was saying the other day, I recommended him for Liverpool last week in a scout report. Obviously, they then went and ended up signing Cody Gakpo for about 4 times the amount of money that Marcus Thuram is supposed to be available for.
Still not bad value what they got him.
Oh, for sure. But when you look at Marcus Thuram is available for €12 million, supposedly that's what Mönchengladbach was saying that he was available for this January, at least before the World Cup. Then it feels like a bit of a no-brainer, at least like from a Liverpool perspective, where Luis Diaz is coming back in. That striker spot is probably going to be taken by Diogo Jota in the long term. Yeah. Mo Salah has signed that new contract. Cody Gakpo doesn't really play on the right anyway. Whereas with Thuram, you could have had him in and, you could pay €12 million for someone who you only really want for 2 years, potentially, or someone who could come off the bench.
It's a no-brainer, isn't it, really?
And so he's a free agent in the summer, of course. So if he wasn't to leave this January, I'd expect he'd run down his contract. But he's just in the form of his life at the moment. 10 goals and 3 assists in the Bundesliga. He's been playing through centre forward the whole time, which I think does make him a more attractive option for a club like Man United, who do need someone through the middle. He can play off the left, as we saw at the World Cup, but he really is at his most prolific through the centre, and I think it suits his strengths a lot more as well. Like he's good at taking on players. He's good at he can press as well. But really, you want him running in behind, and you want him making late runs into the box. He's taken 3.7 shots per 90 this term.
It's huge.
2.2 of those are going on target as well. So his conversion rate is really, really high. He does like a dribble as well. I think we probably see it less of him when he's playing through the centre, but he's still completing nearly 2 per 90, which is very decent. Works hard for the players around him, and I do feel like although he is primarily a goal scorer, he still wouldn't be bad at creating space for the likes of Rashford, for Antony, for say Jadon Sancho when he eventually comes back into the side. Probably the only criticism is that he, despite being quite a physical presence, he's not that great in the air. Only 4 of his 31 goals in the Bundesliga have been with his head. Only wins 1.4 aerial duels per 90. But that's not what United. That's not a priority for them. Apparently, he's open to a Premier League switch. Newcastle apparently could challenge United. I'm not quite sure why Newcastle will want to go for a third striker. in 12 months.
Chris Wood is upgradable.
Chris Wood he is upgradable, but then, I mean, I don't know. If I was Thuram, would I be like, do I want to be battling with a really informed Callum Wilson and a very promising Alexander Isak when I come back in? When I come into the side, not so sure. I think, with Liverpool now at the picture, I feel like United is the obvious choice from a Premier League perspective. I think there's a number of clubs around Europe who could do with someone like Thuram.
Yeah.
A number of clubs in Serie A, I'm sure. I feel like, I'm trying to think now actually. Maybe not Napoli, but
apparently Inter Milan are willing to give him a 4-year contract. So that's what I was reading, that they would be prepared to stump up the money. Because obviously Lukaku does arrive on big wages and he's a lot younger, Thuram. So I think he would be a really interesting option. But the thing that excites me about this, we saw how good he was in that World Cup when he came off the bench, really did make an impact, got an assist in the final, and didn't look sort of overawed by the occasion there. But bear in mind, he's probably not been in that many big matches at this point in his career. Came from Guingamp to Mönchengladbach a few years ago. It's been really solid for them. I think a lot of people saying, well, he's available for 6 months on a free. If there's competition, if you can get him through the door now for about 12 million euros, I really don't see why you wouldn't go for this. I think it's an absolute no-brainer considering some of the money going out there. Another question I've got for you though, because Eric Choupo-Moting was suggested by @Liam Hawkins, and this is another person that Manchester United are reportedly interested in. Bayern are pushing for him to sign a contract extension. His is up in 2023, but from what I understand, according to Florian Plettenberg, who I believe is our colleague over in Germany, he wants to be the first choice striker next season, which he's never really been, has he, during his time at Bayern Munich prior to the season. I saw he started 6 games this season, and the most he started since like 2017 or something like that when he left Stoke is 8 in a season at PSG and then Bayern Munich. This is in the league anyway. So he really wants to cement his place as the kind of starting forward. And you can't blame him, really. He's been in unbelievable form. He scored 12 in his last 15 for club and country. 33 years old. He's scoring with 0.4 shots on goal, which is actually double what Thuram's taking at the moment, and he's only taking 2.4 shots per 90. And his work rate is better. Maybe it's because it's different systems, but he's putting up way more tackles and interceptions than Thuram this season. Olivier Giroud is another name we've been seeing linked with United as well, potentially on a cheap too. But Choupo-Moting wouldn't cost that much if they really wanted to get him through the door. What do you make of that as a potential short-term option as a striker who could be available?
Again, I think Thuram is the outstanding candidate, unless someone like Vlahovic were to come on the market. Yeah. But Choupo-Moting, weirdly enough, over the kind of winter break, I did actually I had a dream about Eric Choupo-Moting. I don't know why he came about, but I'm not sure whether he'd signed for United or I was watching him play for someone else, and he scored, one of many, screamers that he scored over the last few months. So maybe that's a sign. Let us know in the comments below if you think that is. I think on a short-term deal, Eric Choupo-Moting would be fine, but I would be, reticent to kind of commit to him as a long term. Obviously, he's like you say, 33 years old. Struggled in the Premier League a bit before, and he has been really good for Bayern Munich and is a body in there. But I think someone like Thuram is just a better long-term option. Yeah, I'm not convinced by Giroud. I don't know why Giroud would leave Milan as well. I think he's got a really good. He's just got it made in Milan, and I think as long as he's still like a player of that calibre. I don't know, I'd maybe just stay at Milan for the rest of my career, to be honest, if I was Olivier Giroud. I just think he's had such a good time there over the last 12 months. I think a return to the Premier League, I think would just potentially spell trouble for him, and I just don't think he needs that at that age. Whereas Choupo-Moting, I think, still has a little bit of a point to prove, despite his 33 years. But equally, kind of has it made at Bayern, and I kind of feel like he would probably want to make more of a decision on his future in the summer rather than right now when he is leading the line for them. So I think out of those strikers that Premier League clubs are looking at, in particular Man United, I think Marcus Thuram is the guy on the continent who needs to be looked at the most. Going to Italy now, Roma, because this is a player in a slightly different position, not someone who's out of contract or anything, but is out of the team. This comes in from @MyerCollins16 Henry. As our kind of Roma aficionado, our correspondent, Rick Karsdorp, I mean, what's kind of gone on here, and is there anywhere that you could see him going?
Well, it's quite something, isn't it? He's had a proper fallout with Jose Mourinho. He was furious with Karsdorp after a 1-1 draw in November against Sassuolo. And afterwards, I think he said he'd betrayed the team with his attitude and then told him to go look for a new club. Karsdorp consequently left the city, apparently, didn't turn up to training, then didn't go on their tour of Japan. Apparently he is back, but Thiago Pinto's made it clear, that's the sporting director, I think, that he's not coming back into the team. He said something like, he can't let players like him threaten Roma's reputation or something quite serious. So it doesn't look like he's going to go, and Roma don't look too upset about it. They've still got Celik and Spinazzola who can play at right back, and also El Shaarawy can play a right wing back role if necessary. And apparently they're looking for about €7 million for him. I like Rick Karsdorp.
Yeah, same.
I think he's good. That is a bargain. 27-year-old Dutchman. He's been, prior to this moment, almost an ever-present in that Roma side, hasn't he? I mean, he played 51 times in all competitions last season. That included their Conference League triumph. He's played 91 times for Roma in Serie A. So he's no slouch at all. I mean, defensively, his numbers aren't incredible, 2.8 tackles and interceptions. He's pretty solid going forward, though, 4.2 progressive passes per 90, 1.4 passes into the penalty area. I think that's the thing that really caught our eye about Karsdorp, is when you see him in that final third, overlapping, looking to get crosses in, etc. He is quite effective. And to look at his numbers, he's had a difficult season at the moment, but in 2020-21 he got 1 goal, 6 assists, and in 2015-16 he got 10 assists for Feyenoord. I think that was really the season that made him as a player. But apparently Fulham are interested. I'll be all over this. I mean, this is kind of why I wanted to include Karsdorp in this conversation. But yeah, I think for €7 million, you've got a really attacking forward. He would sort of, certainly in a Fulham sense, pivot well with Kenny Tete. I think Mbabu, that has failed as a move anyway. So yeah, he's got tons of experience. There's never really been in the Dutch side, it must be said. Tons of experience, good age, €7 million. I think loads of clubs around Europe looking for a right back / right wing back with attacking threat should be going for him. Right, let's quickly kind of rattle off some of these other ones because, well, Evan Ndika, this is coming from @Rondon the Goat. And this is a really, really interesting one, in my opinion. Excellent centre-half, left-sided centre-half. There, apparently Arsenal and Barcelona both looking at him, but Eintracht want to keep hold of him. No surprises there. They've offered him a new 3-year deal, according to what I can see. And I mean, he's so important to their side. Only Kevin Trapp has played more minutes than him in the Bundesliga for this turn. He's been around for ages. He's 23, but he's played like 5 years of solid Bundesliga football at this point. And he's a big old clearance monster. 5.3 clearances a game, lots of aerial wins, 86% pass accuracy. I mean, I'm not surprised that clubs are quite seriously interested in him. If his contract is set to expire and he's not looking to stay, I mean, how much would you be throwing around for a player like Ndika in this situation?
I mean, I guess 15 to 20 million, would be a really good. I think you could get him for less than that potentially. But if he's not going to sign his new contract, I think Frankfurt would want to cash in on him. It's rare that they let key assets go for free. Obviously, a very shrewd club generally in the transfer markets. He is obviously very important to them, and that they've still got quite a big season, obviously through to the Champions League last 16, aren't they? It's tough. You'd want to see what Frankfurt have to say. I think maybe start low, maybe go in 10 million.
Yeah,
and then see what they have to say. I mean, the thing is, he almost would have been perfect for a club like Chelsea, who would very much in need of that left-sided centre-back, but they've seemingly sorted that with Badiashile. Remains to be seen whether he does take that left of a back three role, but I imagine he will. But at the same time, a lot of clubs are more tactically versatile now than they were like 5-6 years ago. And so, I think his versatility in that sense, being able to play in a back two or a back three, makes him a really strong asset in the market. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see on what happens with that one. I don't know where we want to go next. Azzedine Ounahi, looks like he's probably going to go to Napoli, doesn't he? I really like this transfer from @Bob_Andres. Obviously had a great World Cup with Morocco. There was talk that Angers were going to charge around 40 million for him. Never looked that likely. 20 million euros looks to be the fee that Napoli will get him for, at least according to TYC Sports. So it's not confirmed yet. Leicester and Marseille were also both reportedly chasing him. But I mean, I think it's a bit of a no-brainer from the player's perspective, right? To join Napoli. I know they lost the other night, but still one of the most exciting teams in Europe. That midfield is just, to die for as well. Anguissa has obviously been great there, but we've also seen Ndombele really grow into himself there.
I worry that him joining in the long run would affect Ndombele's ability to stay at Napoli. I feel like there wouldn't necessarily be room unless they're looking to shift on another midfielder, because they're kind of similar in what they do well. I
guess so, yeah. But at the same time, maybe Ndombele is... Maybe their long-term ambition isn't to have Ndombele anyway. I'm not really sure, but he's not going to come particularly cheap. I'm trying to think when his contract at Spurs actually runs out. But Ounahi might just be a cheaper option, and maybe just a little bit of a safeguard if negotiations with Spurs were to fall through. And I don't know, I guess it's also just like another body in there if someone were to get injured.
What move?
Obviously they're going full pelt for the title this term. So yeah, I really like it. It'll be interesting to see how he adapts to playing in a high possession system, in a team that's going for titles.
He'd be going from the bottom team in French football to the top team of Italian football. I think that's a pretty remarkable jump.
Huge.
By any stretch of the imagination. But I mean, if we stay in France, because Malo Gusto, this is another guy I think we talked about him a few weeks ago on Continental Club. I have a bit of a memory. This comes from @HE_football. And yeah, right back, 19 years old, bags and bags and bags of potential at this point. He started 14 times in Ligue 1 this year. He had his breakout campaign last season. He's really, really confident on the ball. This is massive. He's averaging 74 passes per 90, which I feel like for a right back, he's really sort of the player they're going to and looking to sort of start the attacks in this Lyon side. I mean, he completes 86% of his passes too. Strong defensive numbers, 3.4 tackles and interceptions, but also great final third numbers as well. Okay, he hasn't had so many assists this season, but he's in there doing the right thing. And at 19 years old, that's kind of everything you want really in a young defender. He looks quite fearless. Lyon are reportedly wanting about 35 million euros. I've read some reports saying 15, other reports saying 35. United are interested. I mean, let's face it, Wan-Bissaka I don't think has a long-term future at the club, and Dalot does probably need some competition. Juventus is said to be going for him too. I mean, from what you've seen of Gusto, do you think that paying that kind of money is a bargain at this point for a young defender?
No, not in January, no. No, I wouldn't say so. I don't this doesn't feel like a January signing unless Juve are really desperate to kind of replace Cuadrado ahead of time. I think they need to look at a right back this summer, but equally, of late, Allegri has been getting some good performances out of young players, hasn't he? So, that Juve side, if it continues to perform, I don't know, may not have as many holes in as we maybe thought a few months ago. So, that would be interesting. But yeah, I can't see him leaving this January with that kind of price. I don't think United need a right back that much. Wan-Bissaka has actually been pretty good the last few games, and Dalot, I think, is probably the starting right back in the long term. I think, it might be an area that needs to be addressed in the next year or two, but right now I don't think it's a priority for them. But yeah.
But what about Houssem Aouar? Because that's another name that came in as well from Lyon. This came in from at Matter Paint 21. It looks like he finally might actually get his move away from Lyon. Lots of talk.
About 5 years late.
Yeah, 5 years late. Roma, I'm reading, have agreed personal terms with him, although other reports saying that AC Milan and Real Betis, who were linked with him in the summer actually, Betis, weren't they? They are racing to try and sign the 24-year-old too. He's still valued at like 20 million euros on Transfermarkt, hasn't played much this season, had an ankle injury and has actually been left on the bench a lot of the time. But yeah, 13 goals and 7 assists over the last 2 seasons in Ligue 1. Is Roma the kind of move you think he would have been expecting after all this time? I mean, I still think it's a good move, and I still think he'd play a good part in that Roma midfield, certainly with Wijnaldum. He's been out for a long-term injury. I'm not sure about Matic and Cristante, Burns, hot and cold, Pellegrini in there as well too. Great body to get through the door. But I mean, yeah, what do you make of Aouar at this point?
He's just quite attacking for what they need. Like I don't think they're not short in those spaces behind the striker, are they? And I think if you have Aouar in that midfield too, then you need a real defensive powerhouse next to him. And I know Matic has been decent for Roma this season, but I don't know. I feel like I'm not hot enough on Roma's kind of midfield kind of structure to know exactly where he fits in. It does feel a little bit weird, but equally, you know, Roma have made a ton of signings over the last few years that haven't necessarily felt perfect, and they've kind of worked. I think, you know, at 20 million euros, you could have a real star in Serie A. Like, I mean, in terms of his output, there aren't really many midfielders in Serie A who can match him, at least at his peak. So yeah, I think take a punt on him. I'm just quite excited to see him play away from Lyon.
Yeah,
if this is true, because I think he's kind of probably should have left about 2-3 years ago.
I
really,
agree.
let's face it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, our last player we're going to cover today. This is Yann Sommer, and this comes from @Sweekar_Neupane. Apologies if I've got that wrong. But yeah, McCubbs, actually got a bit of news on this one, don't we? Because his contract has been expiring at the end of the season. The Gladbach sort of ever present, isn't he? I think he's missed like a handful of games since he joined from FC Basel. What was it, 2014? He's been a real servant to that club, and I mean, Gladbach have been wanting him to extend. It looked like he looked like the kind of guy that would want to stay at the club after all this time. But it looks as if the big old bullies of German football might have bowled in and got their man.
Yeah, I mean, these are just from reports from Sky Germany, aren't they? That Sommer has verbally agreed to join Bayern Munich this month. He'll be handed a contract until 2025, apparently. So this news could be official by the time you're watching this. Obviously, Manuel Neuer suffered that broken leg, so that kind of so that's, you know, thrown a bit of a spanner in the works to their season. And Yann Sommer is, you know, arguably the best goalkeeper after him in the Bundesliga. I'm trying to think. Bully fans, do let me know if I've missed someone out there. But like, I mean, he has been so consistent. He is prone to the odd clanger, but then for every kind of clanger he has, he'll have like a game where he'll make 9 or 10 saves. He's decent with the ball at his feet, of course, isn't he? That's why he was being touted as a possible replacement for David De Gea at Man United, and that, you know, with Erik ten Hag wanting to implement a more possession-based system. Obviously at Bayern Munich, you know, it has for a long time been a given that whoever's in goal is decent with the ball at their feet, is decent at sweeping up. There's also reports that Daley Blind could join Bayern on a short-term deal with an option for another 12 months, which I find pretty mad. I think he'd actually be a really good experienced head at Bayern, actually. He's been so good, hasn't he, since he's been back at Ajax, had a really strong World Cup with the Netherlands, I think one of the best left-backs at the tournament. But it's undoubtedly a great move for Sommer. I think he deserves to play at one of Europe's top clubs. It's obviously a huge loss to Gladbach, but if he can really establish himself at Bayern over the next 6 months, you know, Neuer isn't getting any younger, and that's a huge injury for him. The second, you know, huge injury he's had in a few years. You know, there's nothing to say that Yann Sommer can't retain his place as the club's number one in seasons to come, even at 34 years old. So yeah, I think this is a great move and a great bargain for Bayern. Yeah,
thumbs up from both of us. I'm intrigued to see what this means for Alexander Nubel. He's obviously been on loan at Monaco. He's been playing very well for Monaco since he's been there. I think the long-term plan was for him to be number one at Bayern Munich, but they refused to let him go back on loan. I don't think he's going to look at this and say, fancy going up against Neuer and Yann Sommer. So maybe that's one to watch out for next summer to see what Nubel does next, because that is a good keeper who could be on the market, in my opinion. All right, that's our look at the bargain transfers that your club would be dumb to ignore, in our opinion, this January. What do you make of our choices? Let us know in the comments down below. And we're going to move on to big match predictions. All right, it's time for big match predictions. And we did do this last time. McCubbs sent them in from his sick bed. But not a great week for us, must be said. Villarreal versus Valencia, that finished 2-1 to the home side. We all got that wrong, 0 points. Lens versus PSG, 3-1 to the home team again. We all got that wrong, 0 points. Inter versus Napoli, that finished 1-0 to Inter. Doogie and McCubbs both back Napoli. I went for 1-1, so no points again. I think it's the first time that we've had a 0 points across the board.
We've had a few stinkers recently though, let's face it, we have.
Not a great start, but the scoreboard is as it was last time, 30 to Doogie, 21 to me, and 17 to McCubbs. But yes, always a chance to build back. And we're going to start this week. We're going to go back to Villarreal once again because they're playing Real Madrid. This is on Saturday at 3:15. Second versus 7th in La Liga. Villarreal on 24 points, only 3 behind Atletico in 4th, so things could really change depending on how results go. Quique Setien, he's come in there. We all thought it was a bit of a weird appointment, but it looks like he's worked hard over the World Cup break. They're now on sort of a 5-game winning streak if you include their kind of friendlies that they've been playing in that time. They won last week, obviously, against Valencia, and then were comfortable in the Copa del Rey. They're looking all right, Villarreal, at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, they now have 5 wins, 1 draw and 3 losses since he's come in. 5-game winning streak if you include those friendlies. I think, I don't know, I'm excited to see how he develops this Villarreal side, which, who had, become so solid under Emery. In some ways, I think this is a much better job for him to take than, when he took the Barca job, which, came with so much pressure. I think Villarreal is, a very, still a relatively kind of small community-based club despite what they've achieved over the years, and a little bit like Betis, there's not an overwhelming amount of pressure, but they are still a squad that is capable of qualifying for the Champions League, and I think if he's in this job for 2-3 years, then I think that is a realistic ambition for them. Obviously, you have someone like Alex Baena, who's still their top scorer on 4 goals.
Good talent.
Coming through, really good talent. Obviously, someone like Chukwueze, who I think is at this point quite an underrated forward. I know he has his quiet games, but when he's on fire, he really is on fire. And Gerard Moreno as well, who hasn't been on the score sheet as much
recently.
Should be recently, but is still one of the best strikers in La Liga. So I think this is a good project for Setien to take on. It'll be interesting to see how how they fare in what is probably the biggest test of his tenure so far. Real Madrid, have started relatively solidly. That 2-1 win away at Valladolid. They limped past Cacareño in the Copa del Rey, thanks to a Rodrigo goal.
Good goal.
Really good goal. So in some ways, it might be quite a good time to play Real Madrid. I think they could fancy themselves for a draw here. Real were, had slightly dropped off in form before the World Cup, but they do have a fully fit squad now. I don't know. I think I'm still going to go for a Real win. I just think they still have a much better squad, don't they? I'm going to say Henry. I think it's going to be tight though. Yeah, I think it'll be 2-1 Real.
Ooh, yeah. I didn't back Villarreal last time. I'm going to go for 1-1.
Okay.
We don't have Doogie scores, sadly. He's deep in the jungle, so in the savannah, so we couldn't get hold of him. All right, let's move on. Let us know what you think at home. We'll go into Italy now, and our game I'm actually really looking forward to.
Yes.
I think Milan versus Roma, Sunday, 7:45 p.m. This is a big clash. Second place Milan take on 6th place Roma at San Siro. And I think personally, Milan are the team most likely to catch Napoli, who, as we saw, dropped points. Their first sort of defeat of the season, wasn't it? Certainly domestically. Dropped points against Inter Milan. And Inter looked good for that victory, it must be said. They piled on the pressure the entire game. I think they showed that Napoli side can be got at. And I think almost this World Cup's come at a weird time. There's so much of the season left. And it already feels like we're in sort of that final streak for the title. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on their shoulders, and Milan, coming off that Scudetto, know what they're doing. I mean, they recorded a really impressive win over Salernitana midweek, despite only finishing 2-1. They generated 3.8 expected goals. Mike Maignan is a major doubt. That's the real shame. His recovery from a calf injury has taken longer than expected. But I mean, we saw Leao again recently, just playing brilliant football, isn't he? He's just explosive, and it looks like they might be getting to time down to a new deal, which I think would be
very promising.
Huge. That would be huge. Certainly if they're sort of Chelsea are looking to spend their money elsewhere. We've got Brahim Diaz in good form. But Roma, it's an interesting one. I think the fact that they got off to a 1-0 win against Bologna is kind of in keeping with what we've come to expect from the Mourinho project at Roma. So just getting over the line in various games. Belotti's missing, but I don't think he's been pretty good since he's been there. I'm really excited to see what Dybala is going to bring now he's back from the World Cup. Obviously he wasn't overused in the tournament, was he? at all. You only saw him fleetingly off the bench. But yeah, he was in such good form before he got injured. 5 goals, 2 assists, and just 675 minutes of football. Tammy Abraham, I'm hoping that he's going to have a bit of a pick-up. He's had a bit of a tough start to the campaign, just 3 goals in Serie A. I mean, what do you make of this? Because personally, I think Milan are going to have too much for this Roma team.
I think I think the Milan attack is really on form at the moment. I thought they looked really impressive against Salernitana. I think Leao should have had at least 1 more goal. Brahim Diaz probably should have scored as well, and Tonali, looks kind of like the player that he was, towards the end of last season, where he was popping up in really dangerous areas. We know he has a nasty shot from just outside the box, doesn't he? Loves hitting it hard and low. And I kind of feel like that's kind of what Milan, they really thrive on that. They really thrive on players coming into form at the right time, especially their attacking players, because they still have such a lopsided attack. That right-hand side is still so weak that they've been so heavily reliant on Leao at points. They've been so heavily reliant on Diaz having bursts of form, on someone like Giroud coming up with clutch goals. And it feels like they're slightly in that moment right now. And this is the time of the year last season when they started to really come back and put pressure on Inter and eventually overtake them in the table. Just on the basis of that last game, they look really good. I think Roma as well, like they looked decent against Bologna. I don't think they're a bad team by any stretch, and they've got their own, kind of agenda at the moment. They're 3 points off 4th place. It's super competitive now, Serie A. That Napoli result has really thrown everything. It felt like they were running away with the title, didn't they? With that kind of 8-point lead, but now they're only 5 points ahead of Milan. It feels like it's all to play for again. And you've obviously got Inter and Juve, in the title race as well at this point, but also having to look over their shoulder at Roma. Having said that, it's at San Siro. Yeah, I think I'm with you, Henry. I think Milan will have too much for them. I'll go 2-0 to Milan.
2-0?
Yeah.
All right. I'll go 3-1.
Okay.
3-1.
Nice.
As much as I love Roma, it's not happening, in my opinion. Probably get it wrong. Happened a lot this season.
Many times.
Final game, quickly, Atletico versus Barcelona, Sunday 8 p.m. So really you got a choice. It's a double screen evening, isn't it? Milan, Roma, Atletico, Barcelona.
Just
the other
Milan,
one.
Roma, I reckon.
Yeah. Maybe I agree. 4th versus 1st in La Liga. Atletico sort of weirdly playing okay the last few weeks. Saw off Elche 2-0 last week, beat Real Oviedo 2-0 in the Copa del Rey. I mean, João Felix, for all the talk that he's going to leave, he's actually in really good form. He scored 4 in his last 3 La Liga games. Still apparently pushing for a move away, according to Fabrizio Romano. But I mean, they've got Griezmann back as well. They no longer have to worry about that playtime clause in his contract. Obviously, arguably the best player at the World Cup, dare I say. Certainly second best. He got 2 assists against Elche, 4 shots. I think having him in good form is going to be absolutely massive for Atletico down this back stretch. What I'm worried about in this game, even though they've got a pretty good record against Barca, they've beat them twice in the last 2 La Liga games at home. What I worry about is the fact that Savic is out, suspended as well, and Hermoso's picked up a red card in that the game last week. So you're looking at a back three of Jimenez, Witsel, and maybe Reinildo or Saul, depending on what he chooses to line up. And although Barcelona don't have Lewandowski, who I believe is still out with that suspension from that red card that he received, does make me nervous. Against a quick defence. Barcelona, though, they had not in great form themselves. Had an absolute stinker in the Copa, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, only just beat what are they called, FC Intercity, CF Intercity. Whoever came up with that name for a Spanish club needs to have a hard look at themselves. Only founded in 2017. It took that extra time winner from Fati to save their blushes. I mean, what a game. They have been rusty coming back from the World Cup. Obviously, drew 1-1 in the Barcelona derby with Espanyol. Always a fiery game that. Jordi Alba and Vinicius Sousa both saw red in that game. Barca do look rusty, and I think they probably look the rustier out of the two. yes, Savic is a big loss, but I just think Atleti at home, they'll just do what they have done a lot recently against Barcelona, which is really, really frustrate them. And this is probably a better Barca side than the last. Actually, no, I don't think this is actually, no, it probably is a better Barca side because they have Pedri in there. But I still think it's going to be very tight, this game, and I think it will be 1-1.
1-1?
Yeah.
Okay. I am going to bank on Barcelona having some tired legs in there and go for a 1-0 victory to Atletico Madrid. I think losing Lewandowski as well is massive because their next top goal scorer is Dembele on 4, and he's not really a striker, is he? I'm hoping that Fati is going to come back in some form. I'd love to see Fati playing sort of carefree football again because it's it's a really great sight, isn't it, when he's had such a tough time. So yeah, I'm going to go 1-0 to Atletico. But let us know what you think down below. I was going to ask you a quick fire question about Scotty Parker's move to Club Brugge.
We can talk about that next week, maybe.
We can talk about that next week. Well, Doogie will definitely not let me talk about that. But yeah, no, what a great little move for him. But yeah, that's it for the show this week. Our bargain transfers and big match predictions. Great to have you guys back along for 2023. McCubbin, if they've enjoyed this video, what should they go watch now?
They should go and watch yesterday's scout report. We talked about 3 players who need upgrading, namely Emerson Royale, Martial and Junior Messias. We talked about Milan's limp right-hand side. So if you want to hear more about that, go and check that out.
Epic. All right, guys. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.